Hello, everyone. Um, Thank you, everyone, for being here with us today. I think we have a quorum, so we can go ahead and start. Right now, it's 104 participants, and more are coming. So, thank you all so very much for taking the time and joining us today. I'm super excited, and we're all very excited here at the ILO to be here with you guys and to start this webinar of what works for sustainability in entrepreneurship training development. My name is Fernando Martinez. I am currently the SIYB Global Coordinator, and I am super excited to be here with Titans and Giants, and we have a Class A lineup today for you guys. So yeah, thank you all for being here with us once again. Just as a couple of things before we start, this webinar is being recorded, so we'll make sure to share with you so you can share with everyone else. And also, if you miss a little bit of the webinar, you can go back and look at it. Also, we have a Q&A button in the down. I mean, it's May 2021, so we all know how this works. So you can go to the Q&A and type your questions. If all of the questions are super welcome, we're going to be monitoring all of them, and we'll make sure to be answering them as we go. And then at the end, we're going to have also a time to answer a lot of the questions. So we encourage you to go there and hit us with your questions. Yeah, and so the webinar is going to start with a presentation by Martin Clemensson. He's an SIYB pioneer, and he is going to help us and talk about how it all began, SIYB with sustainability, what were these early discussions, and how we figured it out. And Nadja Nutz is going to come and present the guide of what works for sustainability in entrepreneurship training delivery. She's going to talk to us about tools and methodologies that we've applied throughout the years, and how can we go about it. Then we're gonna put that to the test, and José Manuel Medina and Michelle Jamar are going to present us with a couple of examples. José Manuel is going to present the case of Algeria, and Michelle of Myanmar, different approaches. Finally, the great Sibongile Sivananda is going to be with us, presenting to us some thoughts about sustainability in her experience, and then also a general comment about our today's presentation. Before that, I don't want to take too much time out of our presenters, so I just want to make sure we're all on the same page and present briefly about SIYB. Luana can, yes. So they started to improve your business program. Can you go to the next, please? Thank you. And yeah, and Luana is here with us. Luana organized the entire webinar, told us all what to do, where to sit, how to stand, etc. So thank you, Luana, so much for everything. And you're gonna hear a lot of Luana. Please, next slide, throughout the entire presentation. So thank you so much, Luana. So yeah, so SIYB is the world's largest entrepreneurship program in the world. Is structured, is modeled after the stages of business development, and so we start at the core of the program with GYB, which is generate your business idea, which provides entrepreneurs tools to develop those businesses ideas and refine them and make them viable. Then we have Start Your Business, which provides entrepreneurs the tools to start and begin successful businesses. In Improve Your Business, the program works with existing entrepreneurs to develop, further develop their business capacities to develop and run their businesses. And with Expand Your Business, the program provides growth-oriented entrepreneurs with tools to take their businesses outside their communities. This is SIYB, and it works through an implementation model that's going to be at the core of our discussions today. The program, we have a lot of trainers throughout the world that are training entrepreneurs, yeah, as I said, around the world. But these trainers have all been part of a quality assurance process, what we call the trainers of trainers, which is done by our master trainers, who are making sure that those who are training entrepreneurs throughout the world have the SIYB stamp at it, and the quality assurance that we are proud of. And those master trainers are developed and certified by our master trainer developers, which are a group of elite master trainers that ensure that knowledge and that this training capacity is passed from region to region, from generation to generation. We here at the global SIYB team work with master trainers, developers, and trainers all around the world, developing new programs, new guides, and different ways of implement SIYB. So please, all of your feedback, questions, etc., are super welcome for today and always, of course. Luana, can you go to the next one, please? Just for all of us to have the idea, SIYB, as I said, is in over 100 countries are using SIYB. To date, we have over 400 master trainers that have trained over 50,000 active trainers right now, belonging to more than 7,000 partners organizations. To date, we have trained more than 23.5 million entrepreneurs, and that have created more than 5 million businesses and created more than 10 million jobs. SIYB is currently in over 40 languages. So what we're gonna see today is a product of all of these numbers, but more importantly, of all of the histories and stories that have been with us along this journey. So without further ado, I would like to give the word to Martin to tell us how it all began and how this sustainability thing started coming around. Martin, the floor is all yours. You're in mute, sorry. No, Martin, your microphone is in mute. Yeah.
You need to unmute on the lower left of your screen.
There you go.
Yes.
Do you hear me?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Fernando, those figures are absolutely mind-boggling. For somebody who started or was involved in this experiment 35 years ago, I mean, what a journey. So I'll tell a little bit about what happened 35 years ago. It all started to happen in Sweden. The Swedish Employers Federation in the 70s had a package that was used that they offered to small and medium-sized enterprises in Sweden. It was a self-diagnostic and self-educational package. But the employers gave the package to SIDA, the Swedish aid agency, and saying that maybe they could have use for it somehow. And SIDA quickly gave it to ILO, and ILO in Geneva thought that could be a nice idea, but it has to be adapted for developing countries. And they adapted and they adapted and they redesigned. And it took quite a few years of experiments in Geneva until, well, it never got ready there because they didn't find the right tone. So finally, SIDA just took the package and gave it to us project manager in Kenya, the famous Douglas Dixon, and asked if he could do something with the package for Kenyan entrepreneurs. And he was running an ILO project with two associate experts, Per Linden and Henny Romain, and they quickly saw the potential and redesigned the program. Per wrote the text and Henny made the drawings, and the rather eccentric Scottish performer, Douglas Dixon, he ran pilot projects at the top of his voice, preferably on the top of a chair, in the shade of a tree. And this was something sensational. It hit a nerve because suddenly entrepreneurs who didn't have much exposure to education or management training could understand what the message was. What was usual at that time is that donors would fly in professors They were paid to show off their complicated vocabulary and impressive CVs. But here, the whole approach was to level with the audience. And that became very, very attractive. So this draft IYB in mid-80s started to spread around in Uganda, in Tanzania, and around the country in Kenya. And Douglas Dixon became more and more busy. He ran one-man shows, so he traveled extensively, and reluctantly he realized that it would make sense maybe to train other trainers who could train entrepreneurs in that way to reach more entrepreneurs. But thinking of sustainability, actually at that time, not only would donors cover all costs involved in the training, but they would even pay entrepreneurs to come to learn how to run their businesses better. And of course, this didn't make sense. So the first radical sustainability decision around 1988 was to not pay participants for attending. So attendance fees were banned. And other development projects in Kenya said, no one is going to come, but they came in droves. And it spread, the program spread like wildfire. Also because there was a person in Geneva whose job was to reply to inquiries and travel the world and show the potential of IYB. But still there was just this draft, sketchy materials that were being used. But the draft was being translated and off it went. So after the first Kenyan small experiment, the ILO started to face three challenges. How to logistically meet the growing global demand for the package, and how to keep at the same time a reasonable control of the quality while encouraging innovation, and how to ensure the continuity or sustainability of the brand and the program, knowing that the generous funding from SIDA would sooner or later run out. So a radically new and different strategy had to be found to be able to meet the demand and keep the momentum up. By then, Dixon had left, partly because there was no fun anymore and he couldn't run his face-to-face shows with entrepreneurs. So the new delivery and sustainability strategy grew out of necessity, not out of ideology or ideas of exclusive private market-led service delivery. It had to be, something else had to be found. So the first SIYB sustainability strategy was formulated as an MBA dissertation, actually, had 5 core elements. A multiplier strategy. The ILO should train master trainers who train entrepreneurs. This was not evident in the beginning, it grew. And master trainers would become the core element for the dissemination and the ILO quality assurance. Secondly, a careful selection of partners. We said then, limit collaboration to partner organizations that have the mandate and ability to implement the program on their own once they had been introduced to the program. Third point is radically reduce the cost for and dependency on SIDA by promoting or preferably demanding that partner organizations should try to charge the entrepreneurs for the training. And in each new country, look for non-SIDA funding for the introduction, adaptation, and translation, and the training of the trainers in the country. Fourth, use a clear monitoring system and maintain certification standards for each level of the delivery system. And finally, keep the ILO copyright, but encourage innovation and adaptations and distribution, decentralize the distribution through licensing. So those were the fundamentals of the first sustainability strategy. And with time and experience, it was fine-tuned and much improved. And the latest example is Nadja's guide that is being launched today. Because there were weaknesses, of course, in the strategy we used at that time. We faced challenges, such as those who needed the program the most had the least ability to pay for it. So a consequence of that was the target group drift, so that necessity entrepreneurs were being abandoned in favor of wealthier opportunity entrepreneurs that were more inclined to pay for the services and to cover the costs. So I find Nadja's guide to be very constructive because it points a finger to this challenge. It recommends way how to solve it, to analyze the market and differentiate the delivery approaches for public and private service delivery, and that accommodates both necessity and entrepreneurs. So that's my stories. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Martin. Yeah, thanks so much. And I think you build it so very well for Nadja's. Actually, Luana, can you go to the next one? Yeah, and with you guys, Nadja. Yeah, what works for sustainability and entrepreneurship training? The floor is all yours, Nadja. Thanks.
Thank you, Fernando. Thank you, Martin, for that excellent introduction and the nice words. Yeah, I'm currently working here in Beirut for the ILO, but before that, I used to work for the SIYB Global Coordination Team in Geneva, and it's a great pleasure, really, and always great to work on such a program that is so well established and such a long history, and yet there's always new challenges, new things that we can still improve. And so one thing we looked at closely was the issue of sustainability. Yeah, and I'm glad to be able to present that quickly to you today. Sustainability is, of course, a buzzword in the development industry. It's important not only for the SIYB program, but really for development cooperation as a whole. So usually, I mean, most projects, most development cooperation projects have either implicitly or explicitly the goal of sustainable change in some form. And so usually what that means is that we want to intervene with the project temporarily and work with local organizations that can take many different forms and shapes, work with them to build up the capacity locally for them to really offer any kind of goods or services sustainably. So the idea here is that once the project ends, and donor funding comes to an end, they'll take over and continue offering that service. And so for SIYB trainings, that usually means that we go in and we train trainers in these local organizations, hoping that they will then continue to provide these trainings to various target groups even after the project ends. And so that sometimes works, and other times it doesn't work so well. And really, not only for SIYB, but when we look at kind of the impact of development cooperation projects as a whole, we sometimes see that even though projects have that explicit goal of sustainability, we still see a lot of cases where, you know, you work with organizations and organizations do a great job providing these trainings or other services for specific target groups, but then once the project ends and donor funding is no longer there, they struggle to maintain that training provision. And so we looked a little bit at why is that? And so we went out and we looked at that wealth of experiences. SIYB is being implemented in over 100 countries. No, it's been implemented for decades, actually. And so we looked at all that experience. And luckily for us, we didn't only find failures, but quite to the contrary, we found quite a lot of success stories and cases where it has worked exceptionally well. And these cases, these models can take many different forms, really. So we've seen countries and cases where there's public institutions that have taken SIYB and really rolled that out on a large scale beyond the project duration, sometimes even building on SIYB further with adaptations and complementary tools. But we've also seen projects make private sector-led training service provision work well. So training provision on a cost recovery basis, even sometimes for target group where at first glance it would seem where they don't have the capacity to pay for that. We've seen projects innovate really and find all kinds of models working with Chamber of Commerce and sectoral associations and microfinance institutions and various institutions really. We've seen private sector companies, multinationals use SIYB to train their suppliers or as part of their CSR strategy. So really so many different ways to make SIYB sustainable. And one thing should be said clearly, this guide really doesn't do justice to the wealth of experiences that is out there. But what we try to do with that guide is really just to look at these experiences and distill some lessons learned in the hope that that would provide some guidance for practitioners to really help them think through that sustainability strategy from the outset. Before I'm going to talk more about what we found, I would just like to take a moment really to say thanks to all those people that have created these experiences. So the SIYB global family basically out there, all the people that work so hard every day to innovate and create new ways, find new ways of making SIYB sustainable. So we're talking about SIYB master trainers and trainers, partner organizations in all the different countries, ILO colleagues in the field at headquarters, colleagues in other organizations that use SIYB as well. So the global family of SIYB really. And it's thanks to them. And I don't know who's listening in right now, but you know who you are. So thank you. That said, let's look a little bit at what makes entrepreneurship training programs sustainable. So first, it's useful to look actually at sustainability with the 3 dimensions. We usually use that diagram. So sustainability for us has 3 dimensions. There's the institutional sustainability, technical, and financial. But really, the trickiest thing is actually the financial sustainability. So that's basically your question, who's going to pay for training provision after the project ends, after there's no more donor funding? And so that question, there's many different answers, or many different possible answers to that, because we do have different kind of basic models of how that can work. The most obvious one is one where training implementation will be driven by the public sector. And so you have a public sector, a government that funds that training provision, that funds a public institution that offers these trainings to different clients. That's usually the most obvious one. And as development corporate community, that's often kind of our go-to strategy, right? Because we feel, well, it should be funded by the public. And yet there's other models out there. For instance, it could also be private sector-led training provision, where you would then have specific private entities, such as business development service providers, that offer trainings and other services to their clients, and these clients then actually pay for these services. And finally, so these are the 2 extremes, kind of, if you will, and then we have what we call mixed models as well, that would kind of combine these 2 ways of doing things. And you usually have, often that's a private training provider, a BDS provider that offers services to certain clients. Some of these clients might pay, but you also have then some form of government subsidy that would make this kind of scheme more inclusive, basically. So these are the 3 kind of basic models that we usually think of. But then, so the question is, what is the right model to ensure sustainability of entrepreneurship trainings? Well, the thing is, if you've come here hoping for a magic strategy to make that sustainable, I'll have to disappoint you, because the The thing is, if we ask that question, what's the optimal strategy for sustainability? The answer will always be, well, it depends. It depends on various things. For instance, it depends on your context. So whether you work in the specific country you work in, or what's the political environment, what's the economic environment. For SIYB, probably most importantly, what's the institutional landscape? Do you have strong public institutions? Do you have a really sharp private sector? Who are those partner organizations that you could partner with for SIYB rollout? But it really also depends on your target group. So usually most of us practitioners, when we start a project, we usually already have a certain target group in mind. Maybe the donor who requests focus on certain target group. Very often these are poor population groups, marginalized population groups. So your classical kind of necessity entrepreneur that really needs support in order to start something small, income generating activity in order to make a living. But there's also an argument for sometimes focusing on other population groups, such as kind of the people that might have the best chances to really build a sustainable growing enterprise. Your classical opportunity entrepreneur that would maybe even gazelles or high growth enterprises that would really be able to grow a huge enterprise and thereby create jobs for a lot of other people. So, but the important thing is here, depending on who you're targeting, your sustainability strategy might likely be different. And closely linked to that is objectives. What's your objective? Are you planning to promote startups, newly created startups, or are you planning to support already existing small enterprises? Again, these two groups might have just like with target groups, they might have a different capacity and willingness to pay for services. And so therefore your strategy might be different. Yeah, so it's complex. And clearly there's no magic strategy, but what we try to do is look a little bit at these experiences and see what are lessons that we can draw from that. And there's three main things, three lessons or steps, if you will, that I would like to highlight here, because I feel these are things that, yeah, I would recommend practitioners to kind of keep in mind when thinking about sustainability. So the first one is deciding on your strategy from the outset of the program. Now that might seem a lot, and it might not seem a lot, and obviously it's complex, but it would seem that the projects that have found good solutions for sustainability were the ones who had actually explicitly thought about these things at the outset. Second, identifying the right partner institution that you'll be working with. And finally, working with that partner institution beyond just the initial training of trainers program a bit further. So looking at each of these issues a little bit in more detail, deciding on your rollout strategy. Again, there's no magic solution, but we saw that thinking about that explicitly really can already go a long way in finding a good sustainability strategy, because I think we're often guilty of just partnering with one single institution because we have worked with them before, or because the donor requests us working with a certain organization, or because there's institutional pressure to work with the main partner of the project. These things can happen, but really there's something to be said for taking a step back and really looking at your strategy, thinking of the objective, your context, your target group. And so again, you have these two spectrums here, from private-led to public-led service provision. And each one obviously has certain benefits and certain problems that come with it. So fully government funded and executed programs have the potential to be very inclusive, right? You can target poor population groups that don't have the capacity to pay. And yet we've seen also that there's something to be said for private-led training provision, because the private sector usually has a very high incentive really to maintain the quality of service provision because they need people to pay for those trainings, right? So they have a strong incentive of really providing quality and well-adapted trainings to the specific population groups that they would like to pay for. But again, it depends on your context, for instance. So if you have strong public institutions that are well-funded, there's a good argument in favor of public sector-driven rollout. However, if you're working in a country that is a low-income country with weak public institutions that might not have the budget, might not have the human resources also to sustain it over a long time, sustainability might not be so great. Target groups, what I already mentioned. So if you're targeting poor population groups, so your classical necessity entrepreneurs, then clearly there's strong advantages that a public sector-driven rollout would have. On the other hand, if you are planning to focus on well-established enterprises, on people that are a bit better off, that are your classical opportunity entrepreneur that might well see the need to invest in these kind of trainings, then there are certain arguments in favor of a private sector-led training rollouts. And so finally, close to that, your objective, if you're targeting startups, people who are not yet operational, they might be less willing and less capable of paying for services. So again, an argument in favor of public sector-driven implementation. But if you have already established enterprises, high growth enterprises, then they might well be willing to invest and go for private sector funded and implemented training provision. So, but then it's important to keep in mind also that there are these mixed models, right? It's not black and white. So mixed models can take many different forms, but they can be a really, really good way of combining these two benefits. So you might have, for instance, you might work with a private sector training institution or BDS provider to really develop high quality training service provision for certain target groups, but then also work with a government entity, for instance, that is able to somehow co-finance or fund or subsidize that training provision, for instance, through voucher systems and these vouchers would go to the population groups that actually cannot pay for these services. So these mixed models can actually have a lot of advantages, but it's easy to see why they're not that prevalent and when we don't have that many experiences of these mixed models. It's because they're really hard to do, right? It requires projects not only to work with one institution, but really to work with different institutions and look at kind of the system as a whole, right? The whole entrepreneurial ecosystem, and looking at how can we change that system and how can we facilitate that change in order for that system to be of high quality, the training provision, and inclusive. So that's a tricky thing to do. But again, no magic strategy here, but it is important, I would say, to really just think about these factors at the outset of the project, not just blindly partner with anyone and hope for the best, but really strategically think about these issues and what your best bet here might be. So once you've decided on a rollout strategy, as a next step, it would be important to look at different partner organizations that are available now and identify the right ones to work with. Here, personally, what I really like is that little tool that we have presented here. It's called the Skill Will tool, and it's just a little diagram where you can basically position different organizations based on their level of skill or capacity and will or incentive. So there might well be organizations that have super good capacity for SIYB rollout and they have a strong willingness or incentive to do so. So that's your ideal partner organization. But there might be others that not so willing, don't have a super strong incentive, plus don't have really the capacity to do that. So probably better not to partner with them and hope for a sustainable rollout. But most of the time we find organizations that either have strong skill, strong capacity, but maybe lack a little bit the incentive to do so. Or we find organizations that have really, really good capacity, but don't really see the interest in providing trainings for maybe for a certain target group yet. So in these cases specifically, it would be important to then work with these organizations really beyond the initial training of trainers. And so that's the point 3, where really we often kind of train trainers and then hope that the organization will just continue doing that and train more entrepreneurs, where really there's something to be said for working with the organization as a whole beyond the initial training of trainers process and making sure that they have a model in place for the sustainable provision of SIYB. So that might require working with them to reinforce incentives. Now, maybe they don't see the benefit yet. If you have a private sector organization that has really good capacity, but they don't see the benefit yet on providing trainings to a certain target group, maybe it's helping them see the profitability of that. Maybe it's working with them to reduce the cost of training provision so it can be made profitable. In other cases, you might have organizations that are very, very willing, but they might lack a bit of the capacity. So then it would be good to just work with them and think through how are you gonna offer these trainings in the long run? How are you gonna price these, host these? What's your marketing strategy? How are you gonna make sure that you continuously have enough trainers to do that you can continuously update your manuals, et cetera, So just kind of not leaving institutions to deal by themselves after you have trained and certified the trainers, but just working with them to think things through and kind of pave the way for that sustainable service provision. So these are the 3 main things. Again, we don't have all the answers, but we do have that kind of keeping these 3 things in mind will help some of you to develop a sustainability strategy, a successful one. Yeah, thank you very much. I'll be available for questions later.
Thank you, Nadja, so much. And please, everyone, if you have any questions, please keep addressing them to the Q&A. Thank you, Nadja. So now let's fasten our seat belts and let's travel 2020 style in 2021. Let's go to Algeria, in where José Manuel Medina is going to be talking to us about public sector driven delivery approach. José?
Thank you very much, Fernando. Good morning, afternoon to all of you. Yes, I'm José Manuel Medina. I'm working as an enterprise specialist now based in Cairo, covering the North African countries. But I have also worked and lead for a long time in Algeria, and that's why the colleagues, I think, asked me to come and describe a bit the case of Algeria. I know that we have among us some trainers that are from these countries, so I would like to ask them to forgive me if any of the data that I'm given is not exact. So Algeria was a nice case for a public-driven model. Actually, the SIYB or the ILO started the cooperation with one of the main institutions in the country in 2005. Just as a context, Algeria, as you see in the map, is a big country, is a very diverse country with almost 40 million inhabitants. Almost all of them are in the north upper side of the country. There is like 75% of the country that is desert, so it makes a combination of different types of economies. The country is quite rich, is a country that has a lot of oil and gas resources, but that is hampering also the development of the economy because it's basically dependent a lot on this oil economy. So at the time, the country just was finishing a quite difficult period for the country with a civil war that was quite severe with the population, but also with the set of economic reform that was imposed by some international partners and to modernify the economy and to pass to from a state-owned enterprises to a more market-based economy. So the situation in that time was that the country was suffering with a lot of people being unemployed, a lot of young population that were being introduced in the market economy again, and there was not too much possibility for those people to have a decent employment. So the country decided, and that's the fifth thing, the country invests a lot on developing entrepreneurship promotion strategies and entrepreneurship promotion agencies, and start to call the ILO to see if we could implement SIYB in the country. So initially, several institutions participate in a TOT, that it was a pilot TOT to train those institutions and to also design their own entrepreneurship programs. And one of these institutions that actually was called ANSEJ, so the Youth Employment Agency, asked ILO to start a whole cycle to introduce the SIYB as a main service or as a main tool into their entrepreneurship promotion program. So this institutional agency were basically focused on necessity-driven entrepreneurs, because it was youth unemployed with not particular target, and it was actually presence in the whole country. So the strategy for them was to start training trainers, and they even finance their trainings as a way to reinforce the non-financial services that this agency was providing, together with a set of financial services to the youth employment, to support them in the launching of their startup, of their enterprises. So in 2008, the ANSEJ, or the ANAD now, made mandatory to all the clients have to pass through this SIYB training if they want to have access to a financial credit. So that makes booming the number of people that were using the SIYB program. There was a lot of trainers that was trained, and they are still very active, but none of them were providing with the same intensity the training. So at the end, that makes also that some of them were much more experienced and used, and some other were less used. In 2014, there was a first assessment that the ILO jointly with the institution decided to conduct, also to provide a technical upgrade of the trainings and to reinforce some of them, because in the beginning, the main tools that the trainers were using was the improve your business. So basically the package was used once the trainers started their business as a way to reinforce the services. So by 2014, it was decided that the two main modules, so generate your business and start your business, were also going to be provided. And the country invests as well on developing their own master trainers. Until that moment, there was no master trainers in the country, so it was a bit difficult for the country to train and retrain their trainers. So after after this moment, and if we go to the last milestone that was in the beginning of the 2019, it was decided to do a second reinforcement and update process for the trainers, where in order also to update the content that, as you know, it has been upgraded. So the latest was on 2017, and to look at some particular elements that were not working as well as they wanted. Now, for instance, the quality of some of the trainers were not homogeneous. The quality of the training were not good. The gender aspect were not taken into consideration and were not correctly mainstream, and also to introduce new topics, like, for instance, the green aspect. So that was done together with the ILO in the 2018 and beginning of the 19. And next slide, please. So as a sort of wrap up, I could say here that the advantages of this for this model, in that case, was the institutional support. It is very important to have a strong institution supporting the whole process. And of course, all these services were provided initially free of charge or at very reduced price. So it was very good for those necessity-driven entrepreneurs that were starting their business to have access to these non-financial services. Another advantages that we have is that the SIYB material can be adapted and developed to fit exactly the needs of the country and the organization. So in that case, there was some additional models that could be created or for some specific sectors, and the country start to develop these models as well. And obviously, it is very easy to assess also the impact that you are having with the delivery of these trainings. It was easier for the institutions to have access to the data and to collect them and to analyze it. As challenges, I could resume in three. The first one is that as this is an institutional driven model, you usually, as ILO, but also trainers or master trainers, do not have control on the selection of participants, the definition of the training contents, the duration of the training modules, etc. And that's one thing that, as project manager, we have to make very clear since the beginning. We have to try to explain to the institutions what are the pros and the cons of this model. Obviously, financial and technical sustainability was ensured, but we also have to explain the institutions that the SIYB is not a static, that is going to evolve, and that they will have to allocate resources periodically to upgrade the trainers, to train new trainers, to retrain those trainers that are not delivering correctly, etc. So we have to make sure, and we have to make aware to institutions about the quality issues, and that needs to be done at the beginning of the process. No, so we can see it that sometimes we are very keen to start working with an institution, in particular if it's a big one that is going to help us to reach the target that we need, but we forget to explain the long-term run, no? What the institution would have to do. And for that, I think it is very important that they know the rules of the game. No, and we have the SIYB implementation guide that clearly define all the steps and all the challenges that those institutions will have to take care of. Do not hesitate as well to explain the institutions, the license and the partnerships agreement that they can have, and define clearly the roles and responsibilities that you may have as ILO and that they have to also take care of as institutions. And yes, that's all from my side. But some of the trainers that we have here would like to know, I would like to fine tune something, they also can write their comments in the chat. Thank you.
Thank you, Jose. Thank you so much. And yeah, let's fasten our seatbelts again and go metaphorically to Myanmar, where Michel Jamar is going to tell us about a different sort of approach to entrepreneurship training delivery. Hello, Michel.
Hello.
They are all yours.
Okay, thank you. So I don't see anything. I hope you can see me and you can hear me.
Yes, we can see you and hear you perfectly. Can you see the screen that's being shared?
Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you for the person who presented before. I think a lot of stuff has been said, so I can use it to shorten my presentation. Hi to especially to the people in Myanmar, because the friends, the trainers are suffering those days through a coup from February. So life is extremely complicated for them. So we are with them, and we hope that the situation will become much better very soon. Also, hi to the French-speaking guys, because I was happy enough to be part of the GEM project in 1999. So when we introduced the GEM methodology, we translated everything into the French world in Western Africa. So I've seen that it has been spread to Haiti and other countries and Congo. So hi to everyone. First, I've been working 20 years in this field, and it's not only Myanmar where I try to make it really a private approach. And it's quite complicated. I will try to explain why. And it's not because we have a partner organization. I think I work with hundreds of them, hundreds of trainers. It's not because we have partner organization that the organization cannot use this approach to make it private. It's not because you are paid to do a job that you cannot do something differently. So first, for the approach, something a little bit weird, I will tell you. It's just that the project approach we are using to introduce SIYB training or any entrepreneurial training is not really matching the private sector approach. We are paid to spend budget, to pay trainers, to reach indicators. But if we talk to entrepreneurs, those guys are in another world. They need to make money, and they need to try to save the money. They try to minimize the investment to make the maximum profit. So secondly, and I think Manuel said it very well, if you want to start a private sector approach, I think you have to start from day one. In the training of trainer process, we need first to find the trainers, of course, and the trainers, they need to practice to get the certification. But doing this practice, if we start paying the trainers and we start paying entrepreneurs, or we take any entrepreneurs, I don't think we are in the right start. We should not wait until the end of the project to see the way it will be taken over or it will be continued. I think from day one, we should be private sector oriented. It's also a little bit complicated with the donors, because the donors, they have a budget, they have some indicators, and we have to tell them that it will be very slow at the beginning. If you would like to use a private sector approach, it's quite complicated to find the entrepreneurs, and it takes time. It's like any product you would like to put in the market. At the day one, you don't have a big market. You have to find the clients, you have to convince them, you have to provide a proper product. They should be happy. You grow your market. So it's a slow process at the beginning. That's something you have to explain to your partners, and it's a difficult part of it. So finally, for the approach, I think that whatever we spend as a project, it should be seen as an investment. As long as we finance something which should be seen as a running cost, even in the training of entrepreneur process, I think that we're on the wrong direction, because after it's extremely complicated to change, what we have done. Example, and I'm sure a lot of you will say it's not possible. We never paid in Myanmar. We never paid trainers. We never pay a single trainer to deliver a training of entrepreneurs. We finance marketing tools. We try to develop new product with them. we tried to put a SME system, M&E system, sorry, which was quite easy and which was helpful, you know, for the trainers. Okay, that's just a global. We're in corporation world, so our world and the private sector is not necessarily matching, and this is where we have to start thinking differently. The key element for me, it's during the TOT, because this is where we talk to the trainers. This is where we can tell them a little bit what we would like to do and the way we should do it. So number one is the selection. I remember when I started in 1999, we trained everybody. We trained really anybody from partner organization, and we didn't get a lot of results. So with the time, we tried to select people who are entrepreneurs themselves, who would like to make business out of it. So for me, the selection of the trainers is the key of everything, because people are doing, we need to find entrepreneurs, trainer, who have the capacity to mobilize MSMEs. If you don't know what is a SME, it's complicated to attract them. They should have a business background. It's true that we have a good methodology with SIYB, but if you don't know what you are talking about, it's complicated to convince entrepreneurs to join, and it's complicated when they ask questions. We need also to find trainers, potential trainers, who have the willingness to start a business and to make money out of the services. We train too many trainers, and I think they are not trainers anymore, they are consultants. They work for big organizations, for ILO, for other donors. So it's a very comfortable life. We need consultants, of course, to run projects. But if you like to provide services to entrepreneurs, we should find people willing to do business out of the entrepreneurs and on the services they will provide. This is stupid, but the entrepreneurs should be the trainers should be available. I don't know how many people we trained, and after the training, it says, sorry, I'm busy. I got the training, I got the certificate, but I have to go somewhere else. So if you have too many trainers and most of them are not active, it's not very good for the dynamic of the process if you like to tap the private sector. And finally, you will see that we will talk about the cost after. For me, if you have a specific target groups, we have to be sure that we find trainers close to them. It will decrease the cost, but also it's much easier for the communication. The strongest point for me for the SIYB method is simple. You have a guide, you have manuals, you follow them. So the way to train trainers is not that complicated. So if we can find people close to the entrepreneurs, it could be very interesting. I worked with other methodologies where they don't do TOT. They just train entrepreneurs and they find trainers amongst the entrepreneurs. It's a little bit slow, but it's extremely efficient. During the TOT, so this is the selection process. We have the TOT, you know the TOT. We give the trainers a capacity to train entrepreneurs. We train them about the way to use, the manuals. But I think we should also consider the trainers as entrepreneurs themselves. They should apply themselves what they have to do with the entrepreneurs. So they have to market a product, which is a service. They need to explain the way they will sell it, the way they will target the entrepreneurs. They need to explain the way they will decrease the cost and the way they will make money out of it. And then we can support them to start their business. If we don't provide a proper service and the entrepreneurs are not improving their business, I don't see very well why we do this. So we improve businesses, businesses are happy, we increase the market. And the TOT should be delivered in the same conditions as the TOE. We are ILO, so we like to have big hotels, fancy hotels, very expensive. So the trainers, they believe this is the standard we need to follow. No, we would like to propose TOTs in the same level as the TOE. Conditions are not good, but this is what will be the reality after. It will help very much the trainers after this. During the TOE, during the training of entrepreneurs, it's still during the TOT process, actually. This is where we have to explain, this is where we have to read. The trainers, they have to keep the clients, they have to keep proposing new services. If it's just to give 6 manuals and then we go and we turn the page, we go somewhere else, we are losing opportunities because during the training, we know better the clients, they're happy with you. We need to know more about what they need. So we have to be able to propose new services and to keep them. So you never lose clients, you grow your portfolio on clients and you just propose new services all the time. If you have 100 clients, it's a business, you don't need more. and you keep proposing new services all the time. To find new clients, when you have existing clients, it's like any business, it's much easier because you can use your existing clients to find the new ones. Finally, and this is really where Myanmar was very good. The context, of course, of Myanmar was a little bit specific because when we started, it was after 50 years of military regime, and it was no BDS providers scheme. It was absolutely, even the SMEs didn't know they were SMEs. But the trainers really grew up very well, and they started organizing private sector activities, fair, value chain, business startup campaign. A lot of entrepreneurs were so happy to participate to fairs to sell their products. And we never paid anything for any of those fairs. They were totally financed by the private companies, by the SMEs. They pay for their booths. They come with a product from the other side of the country. They sold it. They make a profit. They were extremely happy. So it's very possible. This is a little bit for the things you have to take into consideration if you would like to initiate and to conduct such a program targeting, a private sector way to deliver the training. Now the problems, the challenges, let's be positive. The traditional way to deliver SIYB TOTs, the master trainers, I don't know how many master trainers we work with, trainers. We have a specific way, which is good. We learned a way to deliver a training, but we have to change it if you like to go to private sector. And sometimes it's painful when we have experienced trainers doing the same model all the time to say we have to change. In Myanmar, we had the first fight, but within the ILO world, SIYB world. Secondly, and this is maybe not good for ILO, we have to start promoting the trainers or the BDS providers. It's very important that they are known, not ILO. We don't need to be on the front stage. We need to be sure that the trainers are the people known by the entrepreneurs because we need to support them to increase the market. Within the same program, I heard my colleagues talking about that, and we had the same problem also in Myanmar. We work with NGOs. We train their staff. They provide the training, SIYB training for free for the target group in the countryside. And the private trainer says, sorry, but it's not a good point. We have the same program, it's the same name, SIYB, and we have different product. One is free, one is not free. So the clients are a little bit in trouble with that. So approach within the same program should be clearly defined. We are living also in an environment which is the development aid. I call that an industry sometimes. We have other programs proposing services to SMEs, and the other programs, maybe they pay for the training, maybe they pay entrepreneurs. So that's the main challenge. I'm talking from Nairobi. I initiated a program here to support SMEs accelerator program for another donor. I didn't continue because the donor was not that much interested in the approach. He wanted just to spend the money in the shortest period of time. And I say it's not the way we should do. So we have a lot of excellent consultant and accelerator companies here in Nairobi, but the clients are the donors, are not the SMEs. And in that scheme, it's complicated to propose a service in a sustainable way. We had also a problem with the trainers, big competition between the trainers. And that's why we have to, I heard, I've seen questions coming from Sri Lanka saying the business association, SIYB associations are very important. It's true. But the trainers, they like to get the market for themselves. So sometimes we have to deal with this competition. And the last point for this presentation, I'm sorry, it's a little bit short or long. I don't know, it depends on the point of view. The question is it feasible to reach micro entrepreneurs who cannot afford to pay the training? My answer is yes, without hesitation, because we developed a product with Coca-Cola in Myanmar, in Yangon, and in the country, where we try to decrease the maximum the cost to be sure that the retailers from Coca-Cola, there were small businesses really selling 2 cases of Coke per week, nothing as a turnover, could attend those trainings and just to pay for the training. And they did, and they were very happy to pay for the service. So we found trainers very close to the retailers. We found retailers themselves. So it was really important to scale down, the quality of the trainers. If you have an international trainer giving a training to a micro entrepreneur, it doesn't make any sense. So that's it from my side. So please do not hesitate to post your questions if you have any questions. And it was a pleasure.
Thank you, Michelle. The pleasure is ours. And to close us up today, Sibongile Sivananda is going to share her thoughts on her own experience implementing the program. Sibongile, are you there?
Thank you. I'm happy to be here, and thank you, Nadja, for a great work in putting together the document. I think a number of us on the platform has participated in the discussions on sustainability of the SIYB program. If I remember well, as back as 2014. And it's exciting that today we have been able to actually document these experiences and share them broadly. I think the key issues that have been presented here are issues that we still need to reflect on, issues that we need to take on as a program and seriously reflect on what it means within our different areas. One of the issues I think that the report has come up clearly on is the issue of institutionalization. And I'll comment on that. As you can see from the screen, Southern Africa has a number of success stories as well. I've seen others also sharing their own experiences on the platform, which is good. There is the South African National Youth Development Agency that has done a great work in institutionalizing the SIYB program. And what they have done is to make sure that the SIYB program is part of the institution. Also the Department of Public Works, just to mention a few. We also have in Namibia the Ministry of Women's Affairs that has also taken up the SIYB program and made it part of its service offering. So that just confirms the findings of the study to say institutionalization is key if we are looking at the sustainability of the SIYB program, because then the institution can take up the program as part of its service offering. It will be very good for us to focus more on capacity building. I know we shared the different models for delivering the SIYB program. I think when we look at the projects and look at the programs that go into different countries, it will be very good for us to focus more on how do we build the capacity of the different service providers. We have the private consultants, and I've seen one of my colleagues writing a question to say, how can we be supported? And the question is, for the private sector, do they see a business out of delivering the SIYB program? And we have situations where private consultants have actually implemented the SIYB program effectively. So I think if we continue to share, we will learn from each other. The other stakeholder that has done a lot of work also is business chambers. And there is a current a new institutions in the form of SME business chambers that are also coming up, and they lack a lot of capacity when we are talking about institutionalization, but they have the capacity of reaching the necessity entrepreneurs that we are talking about in the report as well. One of the things that also are important when we look at institutionalization of the program is also the program design itself. I think the experiences from my has actually looked at those areas to say, how do we design the program in a way that it is affordable for the entrepreneur that we are reaching? So when we look at the way we design programs, sometimes we focus more on the maybe the targets that the project needs to reach, but we fail to ask ourselves to say, if we're going to reach this target group, And in the long run, we want them to actually pay for the services. What do we actually need to do? I liked in the report the example of Benin. I think I was encouraged to see that what made the program also sustainable is that they were able to package and look at how the program can actually reach the entrepreneurs, not to actually design the program looking at the donor budgets that they have in front of them. But for that to happen, it also means that as stakeholders, we need to speak with one language, because as others have shared, sometimes you get to situations where you want to charge for a service and you are told that you can't charge for a service. These entrepreneurs are supposed to receive the service for free. And so it calls for us to speak with one language and also to introspect as we look at sustainability and seriously say, when we are designing the program, and I like what people are emphasizing to say, even before you start the program, already say, how is it going to be sustainable? So the question of who pays for the training needs to already be there. Now, there is a talk about opportunity entrepreneurs as well in the report. And we realize that they have capacity to pay. But in most cases, as we have highlighted here, it's important for us to understand the market, the segment that we want to work with. Opportunity entrepreneurs are willing to get the service, but in most cases, they are not willing to pay for it. And the reasons are mainly because there is similar programs that are being offered in the same context that they are not paying for. So there is a lot of work that we need to do as stakeholders collectively to say to ourselves, how do we create value out of a training program that the entrepreneur can actually see the relationship between the training services that are provided and their own profitability? Because we have said also in this platform that entrepreneurs are looking at their own profitability. And if we're able to bring that link and make the entrepreneur see value, it makes it easy for us to then talk about them paying for a service. So in the context that I've worked with, I have not seen entrepreneurs that are 100% willing to pay. Some of them do pay for training, but the majority of them, even if they are opportunity entrepreneurs, will not want to pay for the service. But it is upon us. What I've seen is when you deliver the first training, then they start appreciating the value of the training and are willing to actually take up more of that training. So I also agree with what is coming up in the report in terms of making sure that we are delivering value, making sure that we are not just running a training program, one module after another. Our understanding of the training needs, our contextualization, our delivery and coaching. I also saw a comment about how much trainers are actually putting in coaching into the SIYB program. And we have recently worked with one of my colleagues, I think he's put a question there, and we've come up with very nice tools about how to actually coach women entrepreneurs in the rural communities, and also exploring how to make that as cheap as possible so that it is accessible to the entrepreneurs. So there is a lot that we need to do ourselves as institutions. Now the necessity entrepreneurs, in most cases, these are served by our public institutions and them, but also when we are looking at serving the necessity entrepreneurs, it's good for us to have a place where we are going to say, yes, we're going to exit supporting these entrepreneurs. And when we do exit, what is it that is going to happen to them? How are they going to pay for the services? And we've already highlighted, we can look at the next point. We've already highlighted, I think in the other presentations, the importance of using local trainers. I've also seen in similar programs, like you are talking about a Coca-Cola program and others that we're doing, where when you get a trainer within the community, the whole training program becomes affordable for the entrepreneurs. What is it that we can do to actually make the training affordable for the entrepreneurs? And then the last point on this slide it is also just to emphasize that as long as we are not coordinated, in the sense that we are not talking to each other, we are not, it also means that we will not be able to achieve the issues of avoiding distorting the market. Now, the last bit that I want to comment on is how do we take advantage of the technology, the communication technology that we have? How do we bring in that? And someone was already sharing as well, I saw, talking about providing competency reinforcement through virtual sessions. And that is very important. We have also come up with a new innovation that the ILO did in Harare recently on training, on podcasts, and also on WhatsApp. And we have found that with that particular training, we have been able to actually document the GYB package into a podcast where actually someone is talking and training, and entrepreneurs can access that. So I'm saying, as we look at the different target markets and as we look at our context, we need to also say, what innovations can we bring in that enables us to reach the entrepreneurs in an affordable way that actually makes it easy for them to afford to pay for the training. For that experiment that we have started, we trained quite a number of entrepreneurs, I think more than 500 in the GYB package, and they came up with interesting business ideas. And we now have started to go through the Start Your Business, also using the SIYB package. There was someone asking whether that package is still to be developed and whatever. We've already started using it, and we are supporting it with the WhatsApp groups. We are supporting it also with webinars. So I'm just saying, I think the report has given us that glimpse of what we can do when we think through our sustainability strategies. But that will call for the ILO, together with the master trainers and the trainers, to be clear about the strategy that we are taking. Yes, it's complex. I think we've said that it's a complex process and we cannot have a one answer. But when we make effort to actually document as we have done, it makes a difference. And as I've said, when I started in 2014, when we were discussing these things, maybe we did not have a guide. It's good now we have a guide. The question is, how do we take it forward and implementing the things that are in the guide on the field and growing the experiences on sustainability? I would like to end here and just thank you so much for allowing me to comment.
No, please, thank you for commenting and for coming today. Thank you to all of our presenters. We've had a lot of questions that we've been trying to answer in the chat. And we also have a live one by Merten. Merten?
Yes, I think we're already over time. Good afternoon, good morning to everyone. So happy that so many people could make it. I have a question to Nadja, sort of maybe the one to close this one. Nadja, so there's so many different factors to consider. There's so many issues to think about. What should guide our thoughts to not make this kind of, to not provide kind of a way to also justify randomness, no? Like we go for a public sector model or we go for a private sector model. What is it that needs to guide our thoughts when thinking about sustainability of entrepreneurship training?
Well, count on Merten to ask the hard questions. Well, what can guide our thought? I mean, going back, what I kind of presented, my best answer here is really think about these three things, no? Your context, your target group, your objective, most important, probably your target group, I would say, no? If you're really targeting very poor people that, you know, they need support to start up some small income generating activities. We had a question on refugees that, you know, if you're targeting refugees that are in a marginalized community, you'll probably have to have some way of subsidizing that. It probably cannot be completely private sector driven implementation, but again, maybe it doesn't always have to be public sector alone. No, these mixed models. Personally, I'm really in favor of exploring these mixed models more. Maybe it doesn't always have to be private or public. Maybe we can really look at the system as a whole and find better ways to work with different institutions based on their specific expertise and their specific mandate, let's say. It's something that we don't see a lot yet, I would say. So maybe that's a good note to end for this webinar. Maybe we should all go out and see what we can do to really find more of these combinations where we have models where the private sector and the public sector works together based on their specific advantages and expertise, and not just think public or private. Does that work?
I think sustainability has been solved. No, thank you. Thank you to all of our panelists really for taking the time, but most importantly to all of you back home and in your offices accompanying to us today. We are more than happy to answer your questions. Write to us, go and check out our guide. The guide is in English, Spanish, and French. Happy to answer any of the questions that you might have. Lastly, I would like to say thanks to all of you for keep trusting the SIYB program. Thanks to trainers, master trainers. Thanks for partners, organizations, and donors all around for keep trusting the program and sticking with us. And we're really, as Nadja said, trying to go out there and look for the best and alternative ways to make this work and make it sustainable in time. So thank you all so very much. I hope you have a great afternoon, a great night, and a great morning, wherever you are. And hopefully we'll catch you in the next one.